The Warring States period, spanning from 770 to 222 BCE, was a time of chaos and separation for the Chinese people. Simultaneously, this era was considered the Golden Age of China, where intellectual thought blossomed. This was encouraged by the employment of strategists and teachers to advise rulers on military, governing, and diplomacy. Such insight was desired to provide new ruling methods that would increase power and influence over the community, but more importantly, enforce stability of the people. The philosophers, who were predominantly scholars of Shi class, were appropriated a higher social position and in turn were given a freedom of thought more prevalent than any period after. Intellectual activity caused a revolution in philosophy that occurred with what is now considered the 100 schools of thought contended. In China, the philosophies were not mutually exclusive. It was not uncommon for the people to follow a combination of doctrines. These moral codes sought to bring order amongst the political turmoil and disintegration. Many existential thinkers preaching their doctrines to the people would gain followers, whether or not they were successful in political adoption. The most influential of these indigenous Chinese philosophies have remained to be Confucianism and Taoism. The ancient philosophy of Confucianism was founded by Confucius, Latinized as Confucian, who was born in 551 BC. Throughout his life, Confucian was unsuccessful in pursuits to find a ruler that would employ him. However, his teachings were later recorded by his disciples after his death. Only centuries later did Confucianism become an influential philosophy in Chinese culture. Confucian spoke of a peaceful and orderly society, achieved by the methods of the traditional leaders of the early Zhou dynasty, which he called the Age of Grand Harmony. If you govern them by means of virtue, and keep order among them by ritual, people will gain their own sense of shame and correct themselves. Confucian not only supported tradition, but encouraged responsibility, filial piety, respect, obedience, and most importantly, virtue. Confucianism was later refined by Mencius, a very significant Confucian scholar, a century after Confucius had died. By the time of Mencius's modifications on Confucianism, the quality of life for the Chinese people had declined, as many more wars occurred from the gaining military power and size, and the territorial competition ascending. Mencius further developed Confucian ideology of humanness and virtue, and formed the basis of an ethically correct society. He acknowledged the duality of human nature and expressed that the good, humane element of the person must be nurtured to defeat the primal and animalistic side. The ideal community was reached only through the example of a virtuous and compassionate ruler, who would in turn fathom the love of the people and desire for others to emigrate. Mencius acknowledged Confucius' teachings of duty to society, but elaborated on this principle, stating it is the duty of the ruler to lead in his people's best interests. Confucianism, which had formerly expressed conformity, was now revised to also favor rebellion of the people to an unjust ruler. Confucianism's popularity increased until the first imperial dynasty of the Qin. Qin Shi Huangdi defeated and absorbed all other states in 221 BCE, becoming the first emperor of the unified China. He eradicated Confucianism and other humanist philosophies, and instated legalism, enforcing imperial rule and autocratic dominance. This brief dynasty concluded the schools of thought period, as freedom of thought was extracted from society. The Qin dynasty established an imperialist ruling order that sustained over 2 millennia in China. However, the Qin were quickly succeeded by the Han, soon after Qin Shi Huangdi's death. They instated non-legalist principles, and Confucianism was modernized to ultimately become the official state religion. In comparison with the autocratic, legalist Qin dynasty, which lasted 15 years, the Han dynasty, that adopted Confucian ideals of governing, spanned over 400 years. The China of the Han dynasty, which has been attributed to having power and success equivalent of that of the Roman Empire. After centuries of rises and drops in Confucian popularity, particularly due to the influence of Taoism and introduction of Buddhism, the Song dynasty institutionalized a Neo-Confucianism, with a rationalized approach to Confucianism, whilst rejecting mystical elements present in Taoism and Buddhism. Confucianism was continually adapted to the culture, and developed to become tradition after forming the basis of numerous centuries of China's cultural, moral, and political foundation. The first president of the Republic of China in 1912, Sun Yat-sen, returned to the Confucian ideals, claiming that we must revive not only our old morality but also our old learning. If we want to regain national spirit, we must reawaken the learning as well as the moral ideals which we once possessed. What is this ancient learning? Among the human theories of the state, China's political philosophy holds a high place. China has a specimen of political philosophy so systematic and so clear that nothing has been discovered or spoken by foreign statesmen to equal it. It is found in the Great Learning. Yat-sen introduced this new Confucianism to increase nationalism while simultaneously establishing modern Western movements like democracy in China. In 1949, Mao's Communist Revolution eradicated the old ways of Confucianism, by which the people so tightly clung to. Confucius orthodoxy turned to communist orthodoxy as Mao saw Confucianism as a threat to communist sages. However, after more than half a century, modern communist leaders of China promote Confucian ideals to achieve a harmonious society. Taoism, a philosophy similar in its significance to Confucianism, is believed to have begun with the legendary and possibly mythical Lao Tzu, born in 604 BC. Taoism is centralized on the Tao, translated as the Way, referring to the natural way of the universe. The Tao, according to the Taoists, is inextricably bound to all objects and situations as a cosmic force working to maintain peace and balance. Only by accepting the principles of the Tao can one live in harmony with nature, and failure to do so invites anarchy. The philosophy has influenced the Chinese culture through art, literature, science, and martial arts. Taoism, although not as politically and socially influential as Confucianism, became historically significant for developing the mindset that later became Chinese scientific, particularly biological thought. Many Taoist teachings of nature and human body hold credible similarities with today's biological science. Although this seems to be a surprising phenomenon, both drew conclusions through observation and experimentation. Although Chinese and Western attitudes and methods towards science differ, it is apparent that the Taoist teachings encouraged their people to objectively study nature. The Taoists adopted the teachings of the naturalists, responsible for yin and yang, and five-element theories. These theories explain the force of nature among all aspects of life. Taoists consider the establishment of humans as a natural process with equal significance of all other organisms in the world. You were born in a human form. You find joy in it. Yet there are 10,000 other forms, endlessly transforming, that are equally good, and the joy in these is untold. Modern biologists conclude that any complex behavior unique to humans have developed as a result of natural selection and material forces, pushing humans to adapt to their ever-changing environment. The conflicting Confucian view criticized that Taoists consider the body as an accidental arrangement of different elements, as they believed that humans are inherently superior to all other animals, a view also shared by modern-day creationists in dispute with evolutionists. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu commented on the process of evolution. The Tao produced one, one produced two, two produced three, three produced all things. In essence, he refers to the basic principles of evolution as the process of the Tao. This was very revolutionary thinking for the time. Taoism essentially grasped a biological understanding of the natural world through their mystical philosophy. Philosophical thought remains a human phenomenon to discover meaning and value in life and death for an enriched and wholesome life. Confucianism teaches harmony with others, and Taoism teaches harmony within oneself. The thought-provoking and influential philosophies studied not only cosmology, but contributed to the archetypal outlook of the Chinese towards science and technology. Developments on political structure and fundamentally built foundation for the traditionalized moral code. Initially, both were philosophies, which after the death of their founders became influential religions of the nation. The teachings of Confucianism and Taoism are not mutually exclusive. Although many of their ideas conflicted, they were quite similar. Both philosophies preached a happier and more peaceful world for the Chinese people. Historical trends show Taoism and Confucianism have remained present in Chinese culture, but returned to mainstream society, enforcing an essence of national pride.